Hi, once again I'm Sydney and I am a servant of the Almighty God. Here I have the additional tenets besides the basic commandments that start with thou shalt not create any God before me. These are the messages that I have received. Our science reveals God's methods. The key to meeting God's expectation of us is self-control, and diversity is His. As servants we must honor His diversity. And here I have a copy of my latest book, which has all of the things that I speak about and a lot more. So I'd love it if you'd pick up a copy, because I want to keep going forward, serving Him in this manner. That first commandment that we get is in several religions. The first is, thou shalt not create any God before the Almighty. But what have we done? We have gotten to the point where most religions now accept that nature is the creator of all that there is. Nature is responsible for all the intelligence and benevolence that we recognize in plants and animals. So in this episode, I want to speak a little bit about some of the extraordinary processes so that we can recognize the intelligence and the extraordinary intelligence indeed that goes into some of these processes. And a lot of these things we recognize. They are common, they are normal to us, but we have accepted, we have created another God, nature, to whom we have no accountability, right? The commandments don't matter. So I want to start with some things that we all accept. These are things that we all accept. But these are extraordinary processes. And let's think about the synchronization between celestial bodies and fauna and flora here on Earth. So let's start just with the animals. We see and we know that things like turtles, they synchronized, their egg laying with the phases of the moon. And I guess, someone skeptical will say, well, yeah, absolutely, that's easy. It's a dark night. Makes sense. And just based on that, sounds logical enough. Except, just a minute, don't they have to, the eggs don't develop in one night or in, a couple hours. So we have to see a synchronization there, right? So when we just look at, they came ashore at this time, but there's a synchronization between, the eggs developing and they coming to shore to lay their eggs. Studies have also shown that seals, moths, right, and frogs, they use celestial bodies for navigation. So they don't go to school. So somewhere down, and I'll talk about that, that's more broad and it goes into what I call, evolutionary AI, right? I'll talk about a little bit about that. But they use celestial bodies to navigate. Here is a process that is so complex that we could not absolutely design anything like that. Another process that we are very familiar with, is the metamorphosis in both amphibians and butterflies. Now, just think about this for a moment. We build things, we are so intelligent, so advanced, but we build, and we are getting into AI and all of this stuff. But think about it. All of that is concentrated in certain chips. So we have faster chips, we put more logic in it, we have the decision making. We have these databases that you can interrogate based on, past things, and you can even add to it so it becomes smarter. So more information is stored, so we can look back at that. It's kind of like our memories, right? We remember, don't, a burnt child fears fire, that sort of thing. We learn from experiences. But it's a totally different thing when you think about the metamorphosis of a butterfly or an amphibian. Because you think about something that comes from an egg, okay? We're very familiar. All of us, basically come from an egg. A lot of things come from eggs. But it comes into one form. That egg gives rise to a caterpillar. That caterpillar alone, it's superb engineering. It may have spines. It may have the ability to create poisons. It may have all kinds of specialization just in that caterpillar. It eats leaves. It goes through a certain cycle with all the defenses, the ability. It's born on a certain plant because that butterfly was smart enough to know, okay, my caterpillar, which I don't look anything like it, it needs this. And so it says, okay, I'm going to put these eggs here. The caterpillar comes, he eats, and then it changes. It changes from a caterpillar into this chrysalis, which is a totally different thing. So it goes into this, and I'll get into hibernation, which is another miraculous process. But it goes, and then it changes again. So all its entire design, the entire structure of it has to change. So somehow, this amorphous, intelligent nature designed this process. That didn't say you're an egg and you become a little butterfly and you grow. No. You become a caterpillar, which changes into this chrysalis. And eventually, out of that, your entire form changes. And you become a butterfly, which eats different food, does not behave anything like what you started out as. And we observe this. This is, natural. And we don't recognize. Now, this takes a lot more intelligent design for that process. If we look at what happens with amphibians, again from an egg, we have, as an example, some amphibians, they are born as aquatic animals. They have gills. So they breathe with water. They are capable of extracting oxygen from the water through their gills. So that we know that that's how they get something that's essential, right? Because we absorb oxygen, it goes through and it feeds all the muscles and in the blood and the bloodstream and all of that stuff. But they need that oxygen and they have gills. And then later on in life, this external gills that water flows across, they change into something that has lungs on the inside. Lungs! They breathe air directly. We are very familiar with these things. And so, just unlike the ozone layer, where we have this process that is crucial for life on the earth, we see these processes around us and we attribute it to nature. Nature decided that I'm going to create this creature that changes. It's a shapeshifter in its lifetime, right? It changes shape from one thing totally unrecognizable in the next. Because oftentimes, we see caterpillars and we're like, oh, what? Then you see the beautiful butterfly that comes out of it. Total shape-shifting. Nature designed this. Think about it. We do all of these amazing designs we do. A car remains a car. It does not change. A car, we put all this intelligence into a robot. It remains a robot. It does not change. And I'll get more into that when I get into the, what I call evolutionary AI. You know? So when we look at these processes, we should see amazing, amazing intelligence that can design cells that change in form and function. We cannot continue attributing that to something that we cannot define. It's nature. Who is nature? What is nature? We need to recognize God's omnipotence. This is the amazing design. And it's amazing. Religion's just kind of like, no, let's look back 2,000 years ago. This is what happened 2,000 years ago. This family did this. And today we need to recognize God's omnipotence. Let's talk, I want to go on to another thing. Hibernation, right? This time of the year, seasons are changing. Animals are looking to hibernate now. Have we ever taken the time to think about hibernation? Isn't that kind of wild? How long could any of us go to sleep, no food, no water, and survive? How long? We see amazing manifestations of God's omnipotence. That He has designed it, that these animals can take in a certain food intake, and all these processes that happen, all these internal processes that occur during hibernation for months. We are very familiar with it. We see all these, and we never question, how can nature select these animals? And it's plants and animals that go into hibernation. They don't die. They go into a process that, for us, if obviously the animals could not do that themselves, as we would. We'd go into hibernation. We would decide that I want to, like we talk about interstellar space traveling, it'd be easy. We'd go into hibernation, we'd slow everything down. But we cannot do that. Nature did not. It was these are processes designed by our Creator. This is amazing, extraordinary things that we take for granted. One of the things that I see out there again, so hibernation again, it's miraculous. It's like when I talk about something as simple as water. It's miraculous. Echolocation is another thing that we are very familiar with, right? And I've seen there were instances where human beings had lost their sight and they've trained themselves. But we are so intelligent compared to all these other animals. We don't we don't attribute them the same kind of intelligence. And it is passed down unconsciously, quote unquote, from one to the next. So we know that that those faculties are embedded in the genetic code. Bats don't have to be trained. I learned doing research on this is that they have the same eyesight pretty much like us. But additionally, they have these additional capabilities and faculties that enable them to use echolocation at high speed. Because they are not walking around with a little stick and none of that stuff. They are flying around. They chase insects and eat them with echolocation. We see it also happens in aquatic life. There are dolphins and there are a range of animals that use echolocation. And when you think about it, we do a great thing. We have radar and LiDAR, right? We send signals out, and but we have specialized machines for that. Specialized machines that do one thing. Here it is, we have trained operators to operate these machines and to build them and all of that stuff. But here are simple animals, or relatively simple compared to us, and they are born with that capability. So their brains are designed. and all the faculties they need to emit whatever frequencies they do, and to get it back, and to get that full picture around of what's occurring around them. All of this has to be designed and embedded in the genetic code so that the next generation uses it. And so these are the things that we attribute to amorphous, anonymous nature, that are manifestations of the omnipotence of our Creator. We need to recognize that. So I want to touch on something that's a little bit kind of out there as well. I call it evolutionary AI, right? As a software engineer, I understand, how basically we train things. We build a base of, let's say, logic that the chip can basically interrogate. So it says, okay, this and this and this. If it's this, do this. If this, and you can have maybe multiple things occurring at the same time, concurrent operations, right? Interrogating things. All of this, let's give the example of a car or a robot, right? The car can do the end product, right? The end result is it can stop, it can go, it can turn left, it can go turn right. That's it, right? There's a short range of actions that occur. A robot, similarly, there's a small range, turn right, turn left. When you think, by contrast that with what I consider evolutionary AI, we're not talking about go forward, go back, turn right, turn left, speed up, slow down, lift something, that sort of thing. We're talking about shape shifting. We're talking about creating mutations. So based on things that are occurring in the environment, somewhere that database has to have a lot of decisions. And again, simultaneously, maybe we try this, maybe we try that, because these are some conditions that we haven't met, or maybe they're a little bit different, they're more extreme. Let's make, and those changes is not just simply going forward, going back. It could result in feathers, growing taller, growing we say, growing a tail, dropping a tail, doing so shape shifting, as well as, and embedding that, well as with all AI, into that database, so that mutation, the resulting mutation, has that knowledge. If it survives, it becomes a dominant and it keeps going on, right? But that sort of database has to be passed on. And so right now in our model, it's in that chip. It's in that chip, that one machine. That does not propagate, right? We have to offload that and pass it on to the next one. Similarly, it gets embedded somewhere in His great wisdom, that ability to pass that on is embedded so that we have mutations. But we don't see a fish suddenly deciding, based on some conditions, get bigger, change this, something changes. It doesn't suddenly decide, well, I should be a fish with lungs. You see, so there are there are guardrails. So even within that, we see guardrails. Just like a car doesn't decide to, well, suddenly I'm going to become a helicopter, and I'm going to start shape shifting. So we see parallels. I see parallels. We need to see these things, except that the AI that is involved in evolutionary AI is it's billions of years of advance beyond our even comprehension. We don't know where is that database, how is that recorded, so that the next generation knows not just the changing of the genetic material, but why that decision was made. In our case, we know why, because we have a database. It's like, oh yeah, we can look at all these processes occurred, and based on experiences, this decision was made. That is recorded. We can verify that. We can go in and say, oh yeah, we put this much information in there. The computer added this because of, but we don't know where that is stored. But obviously, there are guardrails around it, and there are limits that this evolutionary AI, which we observe the result of, right? We observe this is the same thing that a bear knows to hibernate. A bear does not decide, well, no, I'm just gonna, no, it's embedded. That knowledge is embedded, and it's very powerful. Just like trees. Trees know when certain conditions, external conditions are happening. That database, basically that AI, tells them it's time to start preparing for hibernation. So we see, again, in this order that occurs across species, we see a shared intelligence. A shared intelligence in plants and animals that is not learned by going to a school or some special institution. We observe the power and the magnificence of our Creator in metamorphosis, hibernation, echolocation, synchronization, and we are getting a glimpse of that evolutionary AI that so far many have pushed to the side, and they attribute to this amorphous nature. And now religions are accepting Mother Nature. Mother Nature was responsible for all of this. And in fact, we are creating, we are disobeying the first commandment. We are creating a God before our Creator. We are all accepting of these things. And I'm a software engineer. I am based on logic. But the inspiration has taught me that it is time that we challenge this. Because this will change from the divisiveness, that red line, that divisive thing that's taking humanity down, that turns a blind eye to atrocities, that divides people. The knowledge from God, that blue line that has been increasing, shows us the knowledge also comes from God. And that shows us the path of bringing people together. Because like computers, medicine, it unites us. It does not care about race, culture. We are all His creations. When we start recognizing the omnipotence of the Almighty, that's where knowledge will start that turn, that inflection point that humanity needs to bring us to the greatness that God has in store for us. I want to thank you again for taking the time and remind you this is not a coincidence that you are viewing this. Decisions that you have made in the past, it has been just like we have free will. Those decisions have led, a series of decisions have led to. So I want to thank you for taking the time. I hope this resonates with you and it changes us so that in time we can reap the fullness of God's gifts to us. I want to thank you again. I'm Sydney. I'm a servant of the Almighty God. And I want to thank you for taking the time for viewing this. And as usual, may God bless us all.